Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel Vigil, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
Well, I love being able to come back from the holiday and see this headline. Company line being put forth by the Nuggets is worthy of scrutiny, which I actually think like a lot of people would probably agree with when we're seeing what's happening with KCP, with Calvin Booth being in Europe, just apparently hanging out, even though he seems to be working and catching a few basketball games. It's interesting right now as it feels like a lot of Nuggets Nation feels like the team has gotten a lot worse than better. And you would hope from your GM that that would be the case when you have the best player in the world. But also there's a lot of people saying that Nikola Jokic might not be happy with the Denver Nuggets. And I've heard this storyline come from a few different people, and I'm a little curious as to why. So on our Merilatt Monday, of course, we have James Merilatt, who is out traveling, but still making time to hang out with us. James, where are you at?
I'm in Lake Havasu, Arizona. Yeah.
How hot?
Oh my gosh. It was 117 when I got here yesterday. I'm making the trek. This is all related to my son's basketball tournament. So he played in Las Vegas this last weekend. He's in Phoenix next weekend. So rather than fly back and forth, I'm making the drive, and this is the halfway point. So hanging out here in the heat for a little while.
Hanging out in the heat. Well, the heat is starting to definitely turn up a few notches for Calvin Booth right now when it comes to Nuggets Nation. I, of course, read and loved your article over at denversports.com. It's not an article. What is a column? There we go. That's what I need on this Monday morning. But I'm curious because you are also on the train that like Nikola Jokic may not be happy with the Denver Nuggets. And I'm kind of curious where you got this idea from.
Well, look, I just have a BS meter, and I really have a BS meter when it comes to the Nuggets. They are notorious for putting out these narratives. And the media, let's just call it out, the media runs with it and just repeats it like it's fact, and nobody bothers to go, timeout. This doesn't make any sense, right? And so I provided some examples in my column. It goes all the way back to the Carmelo Anthony thing of like, oh yeah, Nuggets, what can they do? He wants to go to New York because Lala wants to go there for her career, which made no sense. Like her career was the same after he got traded as it was before, maybe worse. So like, that made no sense. It's not 1955. You don't have to live in New York in order to be a celebrity. So that one didn't make any sense. The Jeremy Grant one, like he was their number one priority coming out of the bubble. Got to re-sign Jeremy Grant. He goes to the Pistons. It's like, well, we offered him the same amount of money. He just wanted a bigger role, and he can't have as big a role here with Jokic and Murray. And at that point, they didn't have AG, but with those two guys, that bunk. Like, who takes the same amount of money to live in Detroit and play on a terrible team? Like that made no sense. And the KCP one, they tried to tell us that they offered him the amount of money, and all of a sudden KCP's wife was like, false. I just think this Calvin Booth being in Europe at the start of free agency, he misses an introductory press conference for draft picks. He's over there to see Vlatko. Like that's the story, right? Like, yeah. Are you kidding me? Like a guy who's averaged 3.5 points a game in his 4-year career, who missed the entire last year, who when he got released a month ago, our own Jake Shapiro wrote it. Like this is an accounting move. They'll bring him back. It'll be better for Vlatko. It'll be better for the Nuggets from a cap standpoint. Nothing to see here. He has to fly halfway around the world to get that guy back. Like Rachel, you know, some conversations are a text. Some you pick up the phone. Some you do a Zoom call. Some you get on an airplane and you go have the conversation face to face. Yeah. That's because it's serious. Well, what could be serious? What on earth could be serious that would get him to go to Europe? The best player in the world lives in Europe.
True. True. He is out there in Europe, and we all heard the rumors that they wanted Russell Westbrook. James, there was hardly any service out there in Maine and New Hampshire, which is where I spent the 4th of July, like quite literally hardly anything. But I didn't see Westbrook sign anywhere, right? I'm not missing anything.
Nope. And look, I'm not saying that's what's going on. I'm putting out a theory that makes more sense with the facts than this garbage they tell us that he went out there to sign to get Vlatko back. Like, come on. You're insulting my intelligence. So if you're coming up with a ruse, why? Right? Yeah. If you got a cover story, if you tell your fiance you're doing one thing and it's made up, well, that's because you're going to do something else. You don't want him to know, right? Like that's the only reason to make up a ruse. It's because you're hiding something. Well, what are you hiding? That's what I want to know with the Nuggets. What are they hiding?
Well, and let's be real. There's things where you're right. It can be a text or a phone call. There's other, if you want to go check out to see how Vlatko is looking, you put a different guy on a plane who you're like, all right, go figure it out. Report back to me on if it's good or not. It's not the GM that needs to be the guy sitting there courtside. Why he's out there in Europe, it's a great question. Why he missed the beginning of free agency is a great question. But the whole KCP situation is kind of where I fall into this. I do believe you. And I look back to the Carmelo Anthony stuff of, why does Carmelo hate the Nuggets so much? Right? Like we all get so angry, and I feel like so many people get their feelings hurt because Carmelo hates the Nuggets. Is there like a different story that we're not being told? Because if he truthfully wanted to like move away, whatever, I know that there's probably some bashing and other stuff going on, but don't you think that it would be a little bit of a different conversation on why Carmelo hates the Nuggets so much if it was he wanted to leave?
Well, yeah. And I think at some point he did want to leave, but his number one question, and this is reported, he's on the record of saying it. There's nothing of him on the record saying, I want to move to New York because Lala needs to chase her career.
Yeah.
Was that he wasn't convinced the Nuggets were going to spend the money to keep the team together, the core of the team together, and add to the roster. Same old, right? Tell me if you've heard this before. It sounds like with another star who wears number 15. And if that was the case, and Melo wasn't happy with it. Melo was actually a really good soldier, right? Like he didn't get traded till midway through that year. He played great. He helped the Nuggets put together the best possible deal. They got a really good return from the Knicks for him. A ton of players, guys that were a big part of the team the next year, winning 57 games.
Yeah,
he wasn't a bad guy, and they just chuck him under the bus and let that narrative exist out there, which I just think is unfair. And it's become like gospel around town now. And people can't stand Melo. That would rub me the wrong way if I joined a 17-65 team, had the tied for the worst record in the league.
Yep.
We never missed the playoffs when I was here. We went to the Western Conference Finals once, and I helped the team get the most in return for me because they didn't want to build around me, and they threw me under the bus. Yeah, I'd be ticked too. Of course I would be.
Me too. Okay, so we have the KCP video over the weekend. He got introduced by the Magic, so of course the Orlando media got a hold of him and asked him about leaving Denver. We have got the video, and there's a long pause right at the beginning when he's asked the question, but then some of his word choices is really interesting. So we'll play that video and we'll come back to discuss. James, roll it.
It took a while to think about it, I would say, to make my decision on if I'm going to leave or not, but there was no sense of me waiting to see if they was going to come back with an offer or offer me anything. But my first priority is my family. I make sure we good, at any point, and just being able to be a part of this organization. They wanted me just as much as I wanted to be on this squad as well. So and that made it much easier to sign here too.
Everyone good?
To see if they were going to offer me anything. Like that word choice is very interesting. And again, the long pause of like, okay, I really need to think about what I'm going to say in this moment. James, do you take that as like they didn't really offer him anything or they didn't want to match the Orlando offer? Like, how did you take that long pause and that exact word choice?
I took it as they didn't offer him anything, at least not prior to Orlando offering him. So if you got 3 years, $66 million sitting on the table, are you going to sit and wait for Calvin Booth to get back from courting Vlatko? I mean, of course not, right? Like you're going to jump at it. You'd be foolish not to. And do I think technically, like go back to the Jeremy Grant story, that they offered him the same amount of money as Detroit? Probably. But if it's your third offer and you lowballed him to begin with, and then Detroit gets it, and once you think he's going to leave, you come in and be like, oh, okay, we'll match it. You'd be like, no, I'm out. Heck with you guys. You didn't value me. I have a feeling it's a similar kind of thing here. Like, did the Nuggets technically offer him the deal? Maybe, but if you're already out the door, you've already made up your mind, you're taking Orlando's deal because the Nuggets haven't given you anything or offered you anything. Yeah. And then you come in at the 11th hour, you're like, heck with it. I'm out, guys. I already made my decision.
Yep.
That's, I think, some of the games that are being played here by the organization.
And he mentions having to make sure that him and his family are good, right? Like there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of pressure when you're making that kind of money for this generation, for the next, everything. So it's like you can't wait around. But that answer did make me think that KCP did want to return. It was just that he clearly wasn't being valued enough, even though he was such a key component to the Denver Nuggets team winning the championship on the defensive side of things as well. I think that this is a huge Calvin Booth miss, but it also opens up the question, James, of we're putting a lot of this blame on Calvin Booth. We also know the guys above Calvin Booth have been known for being rather cheap in certain areas. So is this more of a Kroenke situation, or is this more of a Calvin Booth in your mind?
I think it's more of a Kroenke situation. I think Calvin is just operating within the parameters given to him by his boss. We all have to do that, right? We all have a budget, and we all have to try to make the best of it and utilize the resources that we're given in the most efficient way. So now he could have done that differently, though, right? Like there's still different ways to do it. So he's not absolved of all blame, but it's not as though he was given a blank check and they said, do whatever you want, Calvin. And he chose not to do these things, not to bring back KCP. So, but I think it does start with the Kroenkes. And look, when it comes to the owners of my favorite teams, right, whether it's the Walton Penner family ownership group or Dick Montfort or the Kroenkes, I don't expect them to lose money. I don't. They're running a business. And it doesn't matter that they're billionaires or in the case of Dick Montfort, nearly a billionaire. Like you still can't expect them to be in the red, at least not every single year. You spend as much money as you possibly can. And I don't know that that's how the Kroenkes run things. I think they would like to win, and I think they would like to make money, and I don't think it's in that order. I'll put it that way.
Do you think, and this is kind of getting a little sidetracked, the Kroenkes own a lot of different sports teams. Obviously, you got the Rams, you got, is it Arsenal that they own overseas, right? Yeah. Like they own a lot. Do you think that there's sometimes this, I don't know, mixture of different things where it can hurt them one way, where they're like, oh, we're being, we're making a lot on this front, but not on this side of things. Like, I'm just always curious if the Nuggets and the Avs do come in last when it comes to Arsenal and the Rams. And you got the Rapids too, and the Mammoth.
I don't think they do. Listen, I worked there for full disclosure. I worked there for a time. Everything is run as its own organization, right? Beautiful. So the Avs have to be profitable. What happens with the Nuggets, the Rams, the Arsenal has nothing to do with the Avalanche, which is the right way to do it. That's how they do it. So I'll give them credit for that. And look, they've had success, right? The Rams have won a title. The Rapids won one back in 2010. The Nuggets have won one. The Avs have won one. But have any of these organizations had sustained success? Or is it kind of one and done? And then, you refill the coffers and then let's try and do it again. Like, if you look at teams that spare no expense, and that's the Patriots and the Yankees and the Dodgers and teams like that, they're always in it. They're always a contender. They're always really good year after year after year, heck, decade after decade. And I don't think that's the way the Kroenkes run their organizations. I don't think it's win at all costs. I think it's we're not gonna be cheap, but we're gonna be fiscally responsible. And it's hard to win year after year after year if that's how you're making decisions.
Are you on the board that the Nuggets have gotten worse since the last day of the season, or gotten better?
Oh, they've gotten worse. I mean, and I don't think KCP is a great loss. I really don't. I think he's a nice player, but they didn't bring in anybody that's as good as him. No. So they're worse. Do I think it's significantly worse? No. And I was on the morning show today, and Mike Evans asked me, hey, if they add Russell Westbrook, do you think this is a team that can win a title? And my answer is yeah. I mean, it's essentially the same group they had last year. KCP's out, Westbrook's in, Christian Brown has to step up in year 3 and make a bigger impact. But they won 57 games last year. They should have won 58 if they didn't lose to the crappy Spurs at the end, and they'd have had the 1 seed the whole way. Yeah. And, a couple of different breaks, a couple of different bounces, a couple of different better games, don't choke in game 7. Who knows? They might have won it this year in spite of some of the limitations. So, yeah, they're worse, but not significantly.
I think it's so interesting that you don't think losing KCP. And I think your whole point is the fact that it was 10.7 points per game or something. Isn't that the reason you think it wasn't that big of a loss?
He's their 5th best starter. He's a guy that takes 6-7 shots a game.
What about defensively?
This defensive thing, you know what it's like? It's like when they say, oh, he's a really good special teams player, or, oh, he's a great blocking tight end. Okay, well, that's just a nice thing to say. If he's such a great defender, Why do they always have to put AG on the other team's guy when he starts going off? Why does AG have to cover Anthony Edwards?
Because AG's a monster. He's massive.
But KCP's this lockdown defender. I'm not saying he's a bad defender, but it's not like he's getting votes for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, it's a narrative. Oh, he's a great defender. Really? And Josie Jewell's a great special teams player. Oh, Chris Manhertz blocking tight end. Oh.
I love that Josie Jewell's still taking shots on this Broncos team, even though he's not a part of it.
I just get so tired of these things that just get said. And then, I mean, with KCP, you can quantify some of it statistically, but it's like nerd stats that somebody does in their basement. Most of these things are just thrown out there that people can't quantify. Like, oh, he's a great special teams player. Really? Yeah, tell me all those big Josie Jewell special teams plays.
Again, with the Josie Jewell slings on him. Poor guy's hanging out in Nashville. Is it Nashville, Charlotte, wherever he is now? You're throwing slingers at him.
Only special teams play I remember him making was he tore his pec because he was out of position to try and block on a punt. And when he reached out to block the guy, it tore his pec. Not that I'm glad he got hurt. I'm not making fun of him getting hurt, but like that's the only thing I remember him doing on special teams.
What's the worst narrative here in the Mile High City when it comes to sports?
What's the worst narrative? Well, the one that drives me the most nuts is that, Sean Payton knows what he's doing. Sean Payton. I mean, look at the resume. Really.
He won a Super Bowl in 2000 and is it 8, 9? Whatever it is.
Yeah. When I was 35 years old. That's how long ago that was.
I was in 8th grade.
My son just graduated from high school. He was 3 when Sean Payton won a Super Bowl. My other son wasn't born. My other son was 3 years from being born. And I have 3 teenagers.
Dang. That is quite the age gap. So did you recreate the Drew Brees photo then when he lifted his son? If your son was close in age, you should have.
With those silly headphones on?
Yeah. Oh, they're so cute though. I love when babies wear those, James. Don't hate on those kids either, all right? I know you're hating on a lot. I will say your article, though, of Denver.
Easy. Oh.
Your article at denversports.com was very well done, so everybody should definitely go read it. Like James said, a lot of what he put in today's show, he's got in that article too, but with some more in-depth stuff as well. So very nice job, James. And of course, I hope the heat doesn't wreck you too much out there, but safe travels wherever you end up this week.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot. It's always fun.
All right. And to everybody hanging out with us too, we appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for spending a little bit of time. We hope you had a wonderful July 4th weekend, was able to celebrate Independence Day here in the state. And then we will be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Denver Sports Daily and right back here at 12 p.m. for Coffee Break. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe, like, and comment down below. And we will see you guys later. Bye, everyone.